Good evening. Welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Zenith Properties Building Demolition Application Environmental Impact Statement. This meeting is being recorded and will begin shortly. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Zenith Properties Building Demolition Application Environmental Impact Statement. My name is Colleen Toomey. I am with Stefferson and Associate Communications in Seattle, and I'm part of the project team supporting the city. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to walk through a few important items. We will have two segments in tonight's meeting. First, a short presentation, and then our public comment period. To reduce background noise and make sure things run smoothly, all attendees will be muted during the presentation. Tonight, everyone is participating through this Zoom platform. Here are the key features that you need to know about. You can adjust your volume by clicking on the audio setting in the bottom left of the screen. If you can't hear us at first, try your audio settings first. If you have a clarifying question about the environmental impact statement or the comment process, you can submit that through the question and answer window here at the bottom of your screen. When you submit a question, we request that you use short, complete sentences. This helps us when reading questions out loud at the end of our presentation. If you're having technical issues with the Zoom platform, please send us a message from the chat window. This is different than the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen. We will see if we can help fix your issue. Please use this for technical issues only. Do not submit your questions or comments through the window. Otherwise, we will not be able to capture them for the public record. We also have a call-in number for those who wish to listen along. That number is 253-215-8782, and please use the meeting ID that is listed on your screen. We will not be able to take questions or comments from call-in participants, but we encourage you to submit your comments through the online portal at the project website or by mail. Finally, by participating in the event, you're consenting to being recorded in accordance with city law and public records practices. Comments that are made will become public information, and all disclosure rules and regulations apply. Again, we have two sections of the agenda, and we will take a short break in between the first and second part. And just to recap this evening, so we are all here for the EIS scoping meeting. The city is hosting the public meeting as part of the state environmental policy scoping process. The goal of this evening is to share information about the application, the EIS process, and upcoming milestones. It's also an opportunity to learn how you can continue to be involved through this SEPA process as a whole, submit comments on key issues and concerns. Again, there are many ways to give comment on this EIS scoping period. You can give your comments this evening. Many people have pre-registered to give comment. We thank you for that. And a court reporter is transcribing the comments that will be given verbally today. You can also submit online through the city website and the online comment portal by June 2nd at 4:30 p.m. You can also mail written comments to the city at the address that's listed on the screen. Those must also be postmarked by June 2nd, 2022. So again, we have two sections for tonight's agenda. We will open with a short presentation. We're then going to take a 5-minute break. You will see a countdown clock at the break time, so you'll know exactly where we are. And then we will come back to the public comment process. I will give an overview of how to give comment tonight, and then we will work through our list. I want to let everyone know that we do have 17 people registered to give comment. Each person will have 3 minutes, and we will, for the most part, work through alphabetical order. Some folks may want to drop off, some people may want to stay, so you are welcome to participate in whatever way works best for you this evening. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Denise to start our presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for participating in tonight's virtual scoping meeting on the Zenith Properties EIS. My name is Denise Lathrop, and I am the Community Development Director and designated State Environmental Policy Act official for the City of Des Moines. In addition to myself, we have several other staff and representatives listening in tonight. As SEPA official, my role is to ensure that the SEPA process meets state requirements and that the environmental impact statement is thorough and accurate. The city has hired a team of experts that is led by environmental science associates that will be assisting us through the EIS process. Tonight is an opportunity for you to provide comment on the scope of the EIS and for us to listen. While this will not be your only opportunity to comment along the way, it will be an important one. As Colleen indicated, we are in listening mode tonight and want to focus on taking public comment. We will try to provide clarification on the SEPA process, and then for other questions that may come up, we will look to provide a response on a frequently asked questions piece for our webpage. Now, I'd like to introduce the other members of the panel. We have Nicole Lobanzinski and Pamela Zander from Environmental Science Associates. Nicole will provide some background information on the proposal, and Pamela will walk us through the SEPA process.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Lobanzinski, and I am with Environmental Science Associates. I wanted to start by giving an overview of the roles and responsibilities this evening. So Environmental Science Associates is the consulting firm that is writing the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, under the direction of the city. Zenith Properties LLC is the applicant and the property owner, and City of Des Moines is the SEPA lead agency. So a little overview of the project. Zenith Properties LLC submitted a demolition permit application in September 2020 for the approximately 27-acre former Masonic home landmark on the Sound property. The purpose of the applicant's proposal is to demolish and remove all structures on the site. The site was built in 1926 and opened in 1927. And the main building served as a retirement home for Freemasons in Washington until closure in 2006. It was used as an event center called Landmark on the Sound until 2014. Past sale and development proposals for the site did not move forward. This was purchased by Zenith Properties LLC in 2019 from the Freemasons, and the site encompasses 27 acres, including a main building, multiple outbuildings, outdoor facilities, landscaping, and green space. The Freemasons of Washington submitted a demolition permit application in 2019 as part of the sale. Zenith resubmitted the application in September 2020. In 1995, City of Des Moines designated this site as a historic or archaeological property of local significance. In 2014, the Washington State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation determined that the building was eligible to be added to the National Register of Historic Places. The applicant objectives are the following: to demolish the existing structures on the property, to remove on-site unsafe conditions and potential hazards due to existing structure conditions, to prevent further trespass within the existing structures, to prevent further vandalism to the existing structures, and to prevent further graffiti to the existing structures. And at this time, I'm going to pass it to my colleague Pam Zander to talk about the State Environmental Policy Act process.
Thank you, Nicole. Again, I'm Pam Zander with Environmental Science Associates, and I'm going to share some information about the SEPA, which is the State Environmental Policy Act. And this was part of the legislature. You can read about it in the Washington Administrative Code in 19711. If you want to get more details, we have that citation for you. But it's a process. It's not a permit. It's a process whereby people can participate and help decision makers and applicants understand how a proposal might affect the environment. And in this case, the city of Des Moines is the lead agency, and they're going to be the ones making the decision about whether to grant a demolition permit application or permit or not to the applicant. And in this case, also an environmental impact statement is required because the lead agency determined that the proposal is likely to have a significant adverse environmental impact. Next slide, please. So that means an environmental impact statement, we abbreviate by EIS. It's going to be a document that's written as part of this process that's going to provide information, and you will be able to read it. The city of Des Moines will be able to read it, and everyone will be able to see what the potential effects might be from the proposal. It will identify environmental conditions. We'll look at several alternatives. We'll look at potential impacts. We'll look at measures to reduce or mitigate any significant unavoidable adverse impacts. This graphic shows you where we are in the process. It started out with an application for the demolition permit in 2019. And then the city determined, they sent a determination of significance out on May 3rd. We're now here in the public comment period, which goes till June 2nd. You will have other opportunities to comment. As you see, the next step will be the draft EIS, and there's also a comment period affiliated with that. And then after we review all the comments and there are responses to those comments, the city will provide a final EIS, and then there will be a permit decision made. So we use the word scoping. We're in the scoping phase of the environmental impact statement process. It's really the first phase where we are trying to figure out, what exactly should be studied in this EIS. And we want to focus on the significant environmental issues. What is likely to be a significant adverse impact? What are some reasonable alternatives that we could analyze? Are there mitigation measures? And these are all things that you'll be able to provide input on. And it also provides notice to the public and the agencies of the comments and trying to get feedback and trying to get input during this period. Next slide. So the scoping topics, the cities determined that historic and cultural resources will be potentially a significant adverse impact effect here. So that's the suggestion right now, that we focus on that. But there may be other issues that others want to see analyzed. And again, we're trying to look at things that would have a significant adverse impact. Here are some examples of some other types of elements of the environment: air, water quality, plants, wildlife, land use, traffic. Some of those things, if you think there would be a significant impact, then you would want to provide a comment about that. Next slide, please. A little bit more about alternatives. The SEPA process requires that we look at the no action alternative, which in this case is continue the current site conditions, existing structures would remain vacant, unutilized. And then we have the proposal, which is the demolition alternative, which is to demolish all the existing structures and vacant buildings on the site. And then the city is offering another alternative to look at, which would be to preserve and structurally stabilize the existing structures on the site. And there is a lot more detail about each of these that's on the webpage. And additional information can be provided as well if you have trouble accessing that webpage. And I want you also to know that these alternatives can be refined and they might change based upon the public scoping comments that we get tonight and in writing. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to Colleen.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, we are now going to take clarifying questions, and I just want to confirm an inquiry we got from someone as the meeting started. These meeting materials and recording will be available on the project website, and we will communicate any additional information and documentation that comes through this meeting. So we're going to take clarifying questions through the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen. That's different than the chat, so make sure you use the Q&A. Clarifying questions regarding this process, the scoping phase, and how to comment. So please focus your questions. We aren't able tonight, since we're really focused on public comments tonight, to kind of answer every question about the project at large, but we can really address SEPA, EIS, and public participation during this period. So again, so you can submit questions through the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen, and we ask that you use complete sentences that are succinct. And we're going to do those questions now and take public comment afterwards. If you have your formal public comment that you would like to present tonight, we're going to do that in the second half. So I'm going to read the questions as they come through, and our project team will respond. We may not be able to get to every question, but please know that this Zoom platform we're using automatically documents every written question that we get. So we will have a record of it and be able to incorporate that into project communications and FAQ type materials, as Denise mentioned. Okay, so if you'll just give me a moment, our team is pulling up the questions that we've had. Okay, so the first question that we have is, when will the EIS be completed? So Pam, we'll have you start.
Yeah, EISs generally take a year or less, and we're in the scoping phase. It's hard to tell when the process will be completed until we get a little bit further into the analysis. But I think a good estimate would be in the next 9 months. There should be a final decision. But again, that's dependent upon what happens during the analysis. And the city will make the final determination for the final EIS. They'll come out with a threshold determination with the final EIS.
Thanks, Pam. And another question, just again, who makes the final determination? Would you mind reiterating that point?
Sure. The SEPA lead agency is the city of Des Moines, and so the city will make that final determination.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've had a couple other questions come through just about materials. So we just want to reiterate, if you want to review this presentation, as well as the specific slides, the recording itself, this whole process will be available on the city website after the next couple business days. We'll be able to get that uploaded for everyone. And as a reminder, we also have a court reporter here tonight, so we have that formal documentation. Okay. So we have a question, does the city manager make the final determination, or is that the city council or the SEPA official?
Yeah, it's the SEPA responsible official. That's Denise Lathrop, who you heard earlier today. That is made. And if you're talking, there's a distinction between the SEPA determination and a decision on the permit. So those are two separate things. If the question is the final determination, the SEPA final determination is Denise Lathrop of the city of Des Moines.
Thanks. Okay, some questions about the appeal process. Can the property owner appeal the city's decision?
I think I'm going to let the city respond to that.
There is an appeal process for the final decision.
Thank you. Got lots of great questions coming in. Someone also asked if someone objects to either the draft or final EIS, what are the options available to them?
Yeah, that's an appeal question as well. And so Denise kind of answered that, but Denise, do you want to talk a little bit more about how someone responds to an appeal or appeals the process?
When a decision is made, the appeal process when the date of the decision is made, the appeal process is stated on that.
Okay, thank you. Does the EIS analysis also include the full scope of what the developer plans to do with the property? If not, then why?
Yeah, this is Pam Zander again. The application right now is just for a demolition permit, and there's no associated development with this particular proposal. If there is a proposal in the future, that would have to undergo a SEPA review as well as appropriate.
Thank you. And I see some other questions related to that. So hopefully that answers that question as well. So, we do see a lot of questions asking about historical preservation. That is just a subject we're not able to address tonight, as we're speaking specifically to the demolition permit application itself and that SEPA process. But we have documented the questions that we've received from folks and appreciate your interest on that. If you have questions about the project at large, you can go to the city website and contact the team there. So we have a couple more minutes that we can take some clarifying questions about the process. If you want any additional guidance before you give comment tonight, feel free to drop that question in right now. We'll give you a couple seconds. Okay, we have a couple of questions coming in. Give us just a minute to respond, making sure we can answer any questions that are similar. So we have a question about the demolition process itself. Is that a question that we can answer, Pam, tonight?
Well, we can answer that generally. It's difficult in a scoping process when, the public hasn't received a lot of details about the project, other than, generally that it will be demolished. In the draft EIS, there's going to be an analysis, and there'll be a lot more detailed explanation about the demolition, about construction, a lot more of the details that probably people want right now. But this is, like I say, this is the time to ask questions like this. That's a great question to submit. You've submitted it tonight, but if you want to put that in as a comment, official comment, to be sure that it's answered. But I think you'll be seeing a lot more details when the draft EIS comes out. But yes, these are the questions that you ask at this point. We don't have the answers yet because we haven't done the analysis.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, well, those are the questions that we are able to get to tonight. I'm sure folks have a lot of other questions that will come along. So again, really welcome your comments and questions regarding the project through the formal comment portal, as well as staying in contact up on the project website if you want to stay connected to this project and know what the next steps will be for the SEPA process. So with that, we are going to move to a 5-minute break, give everyone a chance to reset before we move into the public comment period. I just want to note, as I said, we have about 17 people who are scheduled tonight who have pre-registered. Thank you for doing that. It's very helpful to the process for us to be able to work through names in an orderly fashion. We have just a couple accommodations requests that we're going to honor at the top of the comment period, and then we're going to roll through the remaining attendees and commenters in alphabetical order. Again, if you have not registered to give comment but would like to, you will be able to. We're just going to work through that list of names first, and then we'll give you instructions of how to use Zoom to raise your hand, and we'll be able to unmute you, take your comment. So we're going to move into a 5-minute break. I'm just going to note who our first 3 speakers are, so you'll be prepared when we come back to comments. The first people who are on my list are Trudy Thompson, then Craig Batson, and Sheila Brush. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we will start with Trudy Thompson, Craig Batson, and Sheila Brush. Thanks. We'll see you soon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for your questions. We want to note that a couple people have submitted some questions specifically around zoning and future development. Those are great questions for submitting in your comments, whether you do it tonight or do it through mail, the online portal. And those are the sorts of questions that we look to address during the EIS process. So I appreciate those questions. They're documented tonight informally. We know that you asked that, and we encourage you to formally submit that with any comments. So just as a reminder, we're done with the Q&A portion, so we're not able to take any more questions. And as I said, we have 17 people who have pre-registered to give comment. We just have a couple of people up front, but we'll start with, and then we're going to move through the alphabetical process. So it's going to go through, we've got B's, a C, E, an H, a couple Ks, and then it will move pretty quickly. So I think it's good to be prepared. Everyone's to just kind of be here and present before your comments. And I will say, I'm going to say the name the next two people. So you're going to get about a 6-minute warning. That you will be up to speak. So we just want to quickly go over expectations for tonight. Like any public gathering and meeting, we just ask people to be welcoming and inclusive to what you would like to see included in the EIS that is really helps, like harassment, intimidation, crass language, insults, and we do have the ability to mute and unmute people. So we look forward to everyone's specific participation tonight. Okay, so moving on to just a primer of what this is going to look like. Here's how we're going to do things. So I've mentioned that people have pre-registered. You must be logged into the Zoom platform so we can first identify the speaker and then mute and unmute for comment. I'm going to call your name and then the next two people who are in line. So a member of our team is going to unmute you. You're going to get a notification from Zoom on your screen. You have to unmute yourself first. And then when you unmute yourself, you can begin speaking, and that's when your time will start. You have, so please start by providing your first and last name. If there's an organization you're representing that you'd like to identify, please do that as well. When your 3 minutes are up, we'll move on to the next speaker. And if the record as well. And I understand that we will try to correct that. Okay, so the first person to give comment tonight is Trudy Thompson. The next two speakers are Craig Batson and Sheila Brush. So Trudy, we are going to unmute you. And your time will begin when you start speaking.
I'm Trudy Thompson and have lived at Judson Park for nearly 15 years. On behalf of my fellow residents, I will read the following statement. The structures on the previous landmark on the town property, which lies adjacent on two sides of our Judson Park property, are the focus of much concern for the residents of Judson Park. The proposed demolition of these structures opens high probability of dissemination of harmful particulates, such as mold, fungi, asbestos, lead, construction material particles, and just plain dust and dirt into the air to be blown toward us by the prevailing south to north winds in this location. The resulting noise and dispersal of harmful pollutants from the demolition of the structures would likely seriously affect the health, particularly respiratory health, plus the serenity and peace of the approximately 300 elderly residents, average age 88 and several over 100, and of the 275 employees who provide the resident care. Also, for a significant period of time, it would deprive residents the ability to dine on the patio, use our outdoor sidewalks, wooded paths, balconies, and lanais, which are all an important part of residential living at Judson Park. In addition to pollution outdoors, we believe that toxic emissions will be taken into our air circulation systems, where our health would be endangered even within our homes. Our 90-bed rehab skilled nursing center lies within 100 yards of the main building to be demolished, putting our most vulnerable residents at great risk. Many residents have pet dogs that need to be walked outside for bathrooming. During demolition and cleanup, air pollution would cause a health risk not only to the dog walker, but also to the pet. Additionally, many residents, employees, and visitors use the south side parking spaces for their vehicles. These would be coated daily with demolition, dirt, and dust, which may cause exterior damage to them. Noise pollution during demolition and the many days of cleanup is also troubling. The constant noise, dust, diesel fumes, and traffic disruption from the huge trucks hauling away the hundreds of tons of debris would be unbearable. We are also concerned with demolition. Vermin would be driven from the existing buildings into the neighborhood. In summary, we hereby request the City of Des Moines to restrict all demolition to fall within the following parameters. 1, we hereby request that the City of Des Moines allow zero emission of particulates and toxins from the property to blow onto Judson Park property. 2, we request that all noise be mitigated to barely audible from our rehab skilled nursing center, and that the hours of work be reasonable, i.e. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and no Sunday work. 3, we request that our streets not be disrupted from demolition and cleanup traffic. Respectively submitted, Trudy Thompson, Advocacy Committee Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. I hope my audio is better. Apologies to everyone. So again, we are now going to work through this list alphabetically. The next person is Craig Batson, then Sheila Brush, and then Catherine Colburn. You will be after that. Craig, your time begins when you start speaking.
I'm not currently seeing a Craig Batson on the attendees list.
Okay. We're going to move on to Sheila Brush, and Craig, we've made a note. We'll come back to you if you do join. Sheila Brush, you are the next speaker.
Thank you. I didn't sign up for a public comment. I signed up to speak because there was no area that specified how you could ask questions. So this was so unknown what your process was going to be. The lack of transparency so far through the process, we don't know who's all in this meeting, and it's a public meeting, kind of has left me a little speechless. I thought, as in public scoping meetings, materials would be presented. If we were live and in person, we could then ask questions over the materials being presented. But right after you were done with your little round of Q&A, you shut down the possibilities of Q&A. So I don't really quite understand what we're doing here. And I think that that is with full intent, that you are trying to keep the public unaware of really what is going on. Just the fact that you're engaging in a demolition process with no idea what the property owner intends to build has also left me a little speechless. So I don't need the full 3 minutes to remain speechless. I just asked the City of Des Moines to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Our next speaker is Catherine Colburn, and then the next two people will be Steve Edmondson and Doreen Harper. Kathleen Colburn, if you're here, we are unmuting you and your time begins when you start speaking.
I'm not seeing a Catherine Colburn on the list.
Okay, Catherine Colburn, we've made a note. We'll come back to you when we get to the end of the list. Okay, the next speaker is Steve Edmondson. Steve, if you are here, we are unmuting you and your time begins when you start speaking.
Also not currently seeing a Steve Edmondson on the list.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Doreen Harper. Then we have Karen Kaiser and Richard Kennedy. Doreen, we are unmuting you if you are here.
Hi, yeah, I actually did not sign up to speak, so I'm a little surprised. But anyway, I guess I'll, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I guess what I would like to say is I agree with Sheila. I feel like the demo of this also needs to take into consideration what the full plans are of the developer, because they should be holding hands of, you know, one is going to impact the other. I'm also concerned with the cost of the demo if it were to go forward. What kind of guarantees that we have from the developer that it's not going to sit empty and there will be, we'll lose out on the Masonic home and also end up with a vacant lot minus the trees, and also have the impacts of the poor air quality and everything else that goes along with the demo. So I don't know what kind of guarantees or assurances there's going to be if he was able to get this to be demolished, what we're going to actually get in return from it as a community. I'm pretty concerned about that. Anyway, like I said, I really wasn't expecting to speak because I thought I clicked the not speak option once I signed up for the link. But I would appreciate due diligence on finding out and including what the full plans of the developer are so that that could be considered in the environmental impact statement. Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. Okay, Karen Kaiser is the next speaker, and then Richard Kennedy. Karen, your time begins when you start speaking.
I'm unmuting myself. I hope that works. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, everybody who's in this process. I know it's difficult, especially when we're not in person, but I appreciate your concerns about due diligence here. Everyone can submit written comments via the earlier website address that you provided. And we have until June to do that, June 2nd, I believe. I want everyone to know that as your state senator, I have been working with our state's Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation and the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation and others to see what kind of tax incentives and other possible tax credits could be lined up for the property owner to agree to provide historic preservation of the Masonic home. Perhaps not all of the other associated buildings behind the home, but at least that incredible building that sits there on the landmark of the Sound property, which needs, I believe, to be preserved for historic purposes. It is, as the city already recognized, eligible to be on the National Register of Historic Places. So I think the historic and cultural environment of Des Moines will be seriously damaged if we allow total demolition and replacement with attractive homes, which is the likely most profitable development for the developer to put into that property, which obviously has great views and great locations. But I think we need to work with the developer to make an agreement that we can make the developer whole. They spent something like $11.5 million to acquire this property in 2019. I think we can arrange for tax incentives and credits to provide the developer with a financial future and to preserve this incredible landmark for the city of Des Moines for all of us. I will be submitting formal comments as well, but I did want the public to know that we, your state legislators, are working with state agencies to see what kinds of pieces and a package we can put together to make this come together. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Our next speaker will be Richard Kennedy, followed by Lloyd Little Jr., and then Barbara McMichael. Richard, your time starts when you begin speaking.
My name is Richard Kennedy. I am speaking on behalf of the Des Moines Historical Society, founded in 1978 and located at 730 South 225th Street. The Des Moines Historical Society strongly urges the Des Moines City Council to do everything in its power to support and facilitate the rehabilitation of the Masonic home, a resource listed on the city's local historic register and eligible for the State Heritage Registry and the National Registry of Historic Places. The Des Moines Historical Society fully supports the historic preservation and potential future adaptive reuse alternative in the city's SEPA notice. Furthermore, it believes that the following elements must be included as part of the scoping process. Number one, identification of specific uses for the historic Masonic home. It is impossible to provide an adequate economic analysis of preserving the historic structures without the identification of a potential use, nor is it possible to understand the full impact on our environment without assessing proposed new uses for the site. Potential uses include, without limitation, a business incubator, a workspace created to offer startups and new ventures access to the resources they need all under one roof, space for community nonprofit organizations where they could share resources, thus lowering their costs, and a conference and meeting facility, among others. Number two would be an analysis of how the project aligns with the goals of the city's comprehensive plan. And number three, analysis of the climate impact resulting from demolition and potential new construction. In what way does the proposed demolition meet or run counter to sustainability goals for the state and the region? The Masonic home, aptly known as the Landmark on the Sound, is not only a cultural and historic treasure that visually connects Washingtonians and visitors alike to the legacies of our past, but is also an undeniable opportunity to actualize the goals set forth by the City of Des Moines and its local and regional stakeholders and community members. Historic preservation and potential future adaptive reuse alternatives must be thoroughly exhausted prior to any further consideration of demolition, especially when redevelopment plans have been kept from the public. The Des Moines Historical Society also supports the EIS scoping comments made by the Washington Historic Preservation Trust. We have an opportunity to revitalize one of Washington's great historic landmarks, make the Masonic home a vital part of Des Moines. Let's not squander this chance. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Richard. Our next speaker will be Lloyd Little Jr., followed by Barbara McMichael and then Chris Moore. And just to confirm, we will unmute you first. You'll get a notification and then you can unmute yourself. Then you begin speaking. So you can't unmute yourself until you receive permission from the host. Just want to confirm that. So we are seeing two Lloyd Littles listed on the screen. We're going to start with Lloyd Little Jr. to match the registration, and we'll see if that is the right speaker.
Hello. Hi.
Lloyd. Great, thank you.
Great, thanks for having me. Yeah, the other person is my dad, and he's just listening. He's not going to speak.
Okay, thanks.
But also, just a note, I think George Pettibone is signed up to speak later, and he's with me now. So when it's his turn, you could just come back to me.
Noted. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And me and my dad and family are residents of Des Moines for 20 plus years. We love this community. One of the first things I noticed when I came here through Des Moines when I was very young is this beautiful building. Just in the heart of Des Moines. It's the architect. I can't, not 100% sure, but I think it's like related to the Paradise Lodge up in Rainier. It's just classic, beautiful art that it's unique in the nation. And we'd love to see it preserved. We've got a lot of old growth there. So it's not environmentally friendly to tear it all down. We noticed in the EIS statement too, no regard to the wildlife. We got bald eagles that go back there. Canadian geese love that lawn, and they're getting their home pushed out big time. So we'd like to see that preserved. And there's huge aquifers up there. I mean, Des Moines is famous for its water. So if you demolish everything with all those pollutants and build stuff, you know, we're polluting our own water supply, which is going forward. Water is a very precious resource going forward in today's climate change world. So we need to preserve that. Like Karen Kaiser said, we'd love to see it preserved as a national heritage site, and not just the front. The back area is wonderful too. When my mom was alive, bless her soul, we'd go back there for nature walks and we'd see these beautiful animals. And just, it has the potential to be a beautiful garden, you know. We got to think bigger instead of just making our community bland and like cookie cutter like every other community. Let's just take this place. Let's make the developer whole. Yeah, I mean, they're entitled to compensation if it doesn't go through. But, you know, we need to think bigger than that. This can be a real cultural, natural, beautiful place, not just for Des Moines, but for the whole state of Washington. And I'd like to continue with the people here, work with the city of Des Moines, and also Senator Karen Kaiser. I know Tina Orwell, Congresswoman, lives right across the street. Also, Mia Gregerson just down the street. So bring them in. But yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. A reminder, everyone, just to state your full name before you give your comment for the record. Our next speaker is Barbara McMichael, followed by Chris Moore and Dan Peters. And Barbara, we're seeing two Barbara McMichael listed, so we're going to allow the first one to talk, see if we can get the right person. We're seeing a hand raised. Just give us a moment. Barbara, are you with us? Barbara, we're not hearing you, but we've noted that you're here. We're going to try.
Found it.
Okay, Barbara, please remember to state your full name, your time begins when you start speaking.
Yep. Thank you. I'm Barbara McMichael, Des Moines resident and also representing Silco Culture. The state legislature identified 4 primary purposes when it adopted SEPA. I'm addressing 3 of those today with respect to the Des Moines Masonic home. Purpose 1, to encourage productive and enjoyable harmony between people and their environment. As Silco Culture's representative tonight, I can assert that there is no other building in South King County that comes close to representing the Masonic home's combination of history, elegance, and legacy of service. The home not only provided a sanctuary for people in their retirement, it's also been a location for student recitals, civic meetings, weddings, and jazz festivals. And for anyone approaching our city from the water, it is the splendid landmark on the Sound. The home has always been a harmonious and identifying feature in the city's landscape. Frankly, it would be an ideal civic hub for Des Moines. SEPA purpose number 2, promote efforts to prevent or eliminate damage to the environment. Just this March, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a code red call to reduce carbon emissions. Here in Des Moines, if we're thinking globally and acting locally, that means we must fight to preserve the Masonic home. The National Trust for Historic Preservation calls this the reuse imperative. New building construction accounts for 40% of human-produced carbon emissions worldwide. Building reuse avoids the upfront carbon emissions that occur with new construction. There's research showing that it takes up to 80 years to pay back the carbon debt incurred when an existing building is replaced with a new structure, even if the new building's energy efficient. SEPA purpose number 3, to stimulate public health and welfare. As a longtime resident in this airport community, I'm here to say that the rampant development I've witnessed has been unsettling. Just the last few years, the city's allowed acres of tree canopy to be replaced with warehouses. There's been the demolition of the Van Gaskin House, replacement of Wesley Garden, work on the marina, extension of both light rail and 509 freeway. All of these have brought disruption, air pollution, noise pollution, and more light pollution at night. These cumulative efforts place stress on our community and result in measurable negative health impacts. The demolition of the Masonic home, Des Moines' prime and fondly regarded landmark, would have a profoundly demoralizing impact. That is the public health effect. Now, here's the stimulating welfare part. Repurposing of historic buildings creates jobs. A study by Preservation Green Lab shows that residential rehabilitation creates 50% more jobs than new construction. There's a major housing crisis in our region and right here in town. We don't need a bunch of shiny new McMansions or condos, but we have a dire need for affordable and possibly transitional housing. It isn't that far from what the Masonic home was built for in the first place. With thoughtful rehabilitation and a public-private partnership, the home could serve a similar purpose today. And I hope Des Moines will demonstrate leadership in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, our next speaker is Chris Moore, who is then followed by Dan Peters and then George Pettibone. Chris, please state your name for the record when you begin speaking, and your time starts when you start speaking.
Hello, my name is Chris Moore. I'm the Executive Director with the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to comment this evening. We will be submitting written comments as well, so I'm not reading a prepared statement. I simply want to outline some of our concerns and pieces that we will be including as part of our written scoping comments. The Washington Trust is a nonprofit advocacy organization. We work across the state to help preserve historic structures. In 2015, we actually received a nomination to include the Masonic home, the landmark on the Sound, in our Most Endangered Places program. It's a program that we use.
Chris, can you turn your volume up?
Sure, let's see.
Thanks.
Is that helping? Is that better now?
That is better.
Okay, sorry about that. I will try and speak more clearly into my microphone here. So as I was saying, we did receive a nomination to include the landmark on the Sound in this program because of the challenge it was facing with it being vacant and not being able to be economically viable as an event venue and an event center. We've been following this ever since, and the few comments I want to make related to the scoping is it's been noted that the building's eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, which is true. That eligibility is not really hierarchical in nature, but I'm here to state that there is really not another building like this in the entire state of Washington. So it's important to Des Moines, it's important to the region, it's important to the state. I agree with other speakers who have said it is impossible to divorce the future use, the planned use of the site from the demolition. There is a but-for phrase or clause that we use. Demolition would not be happening but for a new development that will come on the site. You cannot assess this site. You cannot look at economic alternatives for the site for preservation of it without knowing what the use is, without having a proposed development in mind. You simply cannot divorce those two things. So the scoping should include, by rights, what the proposed new development will include. A few other measures that we will be writing to, and that is the archaeological component. I did not see any mention around archaeology. I think the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation has included comments that suggest there's a high probability of archaeological resources to be found on site, nor is there any discussion so far of a sustainability assessment of this. What is the climate change impact to the site? The rest of our comments I will leave for our written comments. I wanted to get those into the record this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Our next speaker is Dan Peters. We're not seeing a Dan Peters on the list. Dan, if you can use the raise hand function as a participant, that'd be great so we can identify you. Let's see. Dan Peters, are you with Barbara McMichael? Could we unmute Barbara and let's see if, or speaker may be with her. Hi, do we have Dan Peters? Okay, we'll
No,
come back. Oh, are you with?
This is Ernest Thompson. For some good reason, I was unmuted. May I speak?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
My name is Ernest Thompson. I'm a council member in Normandy Park. And I'd like to say that the city of Normandy Park does not support the destruction of this building under any circumstances whatsoever. Decades ago, I went into that building for other reasons and was stunned by the utter beauty that was taken in building that building. The handrails, the wood, it looked like something straight out of a Bogart and Bacall Casablanca movie. They had nursing facilities there, and they had pools where you could wheel down nursing wheelchairs 2 at a time into the pools so people who were confined to wheelchairs could get their sauna, their bath, and all of this, and then wheel them out. They had a lovely dining room. It's gorgeous beyond belief. And I want to say that when you talk about mental health, what's important is having buildings like that, that you're proud to look at, that are used by the public in mass, and they can be utilized in so many, many ways. And this is how you build actual culture by maintaining these buildings, not just tearing it down and building another expensive house for somebody, or even if it's so-called affordable housing. No, this is completely wrong. You have to build this for future generations, for the society and the people who have a sense of aesthetics. Any council member who happens to vote in favor of tearing down this building only demonstrates that they have zero, and I do mean zero, sense of aesthetics, zero sense of beauty, zero sense of what it means to build culture, and they should be utterly and completely ashamed of themselves. And somehow this must be saved. If it isn't, somehow, some way, they will be responsible for blood on the track. So many people feel so passionately about this. Normandy Park is opposed to its destruction. Save the Masonic Lodge. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll come back and look for Dan Peters later. Our next speaker is George Pettibone, who I understand is with Lloyd Little Jr., so we will unmute Lloyd again. And George, are you with us with Lloyd?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Your time begins when you start talking.
Okay. I live across the street from the Masonic home. I bought my home 30 years ago. I have been amazed and delighted to look out the window and see this magnificent, iconic building. It is the most important structure in the city of Des Moines. It is the most iconic building in the city of Des Moines, perhaps the whole south end of Seattle. There is nothing like this in Renton. There's nothing like this in Bellevue. There's nothing anywhere overlooking Puget Sound with a 5-story building built out of solid concrete by the Masons. There is nothing wrong with the structure of the building. I can almost guarantee you, without even knowing for positive, that the Masons built the heck out of this building. It has so much structural integrity that is their entire life. Masons do not build sloppy little buildings that fall down in 80 years. There is nothing about it that's bad. I know the contractor who replaced the windows 30 years ago. The windows are built for the Alaska and Canadian market. There's nothing wrong with the windows. The building is very, very solid, and any destruction of this building would be a travesty. Any political people who vote to tear it down will be out of a job pretty soon, because this is the most magnificent, gorgeous, architecturally pleasing building in this neighborhood, from here to I don't know where, maybe somewhere up by the Canadian border. There is a very, very few things that are this big and this important. And everybody that goes by it in a boat looks up at it and says, whoa, look at that beautiful building. And it's 27 acres. There's plenty of room to add other buildings out behind it. You could build all kinds of things in there. But if you really had a brain, you'd sit down and say, I think the city of Des Moines could take it over, become the new city hall, could become the new courthouse, could become the new place where the police meet up with. It could be the building department, and you could have lots of outbuildings, and you could have structures that are taking care of a lot of stuff. But with all that acreage, you got no problem turning it into the new city hall complex. And everything about it should not be torn down. It is a gorgeous, iconic building. I look out my window every day for 30 years and I love it. And you'd be ashamed of yourself if you tore it down. Somebody come in here from Sumner and try to tear my house down, I'd be putting on a battle. You people need to all be ashamed of the amount of lack of installed people in the neighborhood know nothing about this. Nobody got notified, nobody. You need to be embarrassed by the fact you haven't followed SEPA law. None of the neighbors got a notice, which is required by law. And all of the 4x8 signs belong on the outside of the fence, not the inside.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, George, so much. We have to move on, but appreciate that you've given comment and encourage you to submit additional comments through the online portal or through mail. So just to let people know where we're at, I understand I had audio problems earlier on. My apologies for that. So we have about 4 registered speakers left for the evening. If you are here, you haven't pre-registered or haven't had an opportunity to give comment and would like to do so in this forum, we have plenty of time tonight to do so. So if you have not given comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. We're going to work through the next 4 names and then we'll come back to additional folks who have raised their hands. So the next person on our list is Alina Rogers. Alina, if you are with us, we are going to try to unmute you. We're not seeing an Alina Rogers. Okay, we're going to move on. The next 3 speakers, the last people who have pre-registered, are Holly Taylor, Keith Weir, and Edward Woods. So our next speaker will be Holly. Holly, our team, if you are here, our team is unmuting you. We see you on the list and your time begins when you start speaking.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Holly Taylor. My physical address is 11721 Southwest 250th Lane on Vashon Island, but I'm from Burien, just up the road from the Des Moines Masonic Home. And I support the preservation alternative for the Des Moines Masonic Home. The first thing I want to say is that the Masonic Home was not only for Freemasons, as I think Denise or Nicole said earlier. Freemasons were all men. The Masonic Home was also home to many members of Eastern Star who were all women. So I want to make sure that the documentation and the assessment of the historical significance of the property also considers the significance of women's history. And I don't think that there is even one historic landmark in the city of Des Moines that really focuses on the significance of women's history. So I think that's an important aspect of this property to take into consideration. I also would like to say that the Des Moines Masonic Home is an important cultural landmark associated with how we as a society take care of our elders and other vulnerable members. And I think this theme should be one of the focus points in the conversation about the property's future, as well as about the property's past. So I'm a historic preservation consultant as a professional. I also teach historic preservation planning at the University of Washington in the Department of Urban Design and Planning. And I'm proud to say that during winter quarter earlier this year, a team of my graduate students analyzed preservation options for the Des Moines Masonic Home. And those students may be in attendance tonight. I'm not able to see the other attendees, so I'm not sure. But my students came up with a preservation scenario involving rehabilitation of the core historic building and compatible infill development. And if my grad students can come up with a financially viable private sector preservation option over the course of a few weeks, that also supports the city's comprehensive plan goals for housing, then I think the experts on the city's project team could be tasked with exploring this option as well. And if the team is not sure how to go about it, perhaps my students would be willing to help them. So in addition to looking at private sector options, I would also strongly encourage the city to explore public sector options for preservation of the Masonic home. For example, looking at chartering a public development authority for the purpose of acquiring the property, working with nonprofit partners to preserve the core historic building, rehabilitate it for housing with appropriate infill development of additional housing units on the rest of that 27 acres. So in closing, I just would like to note that, and other speakers have said this as well, the Des Moines Masonic Home is one of the most interesting buildings in South King County. It's architecturally significant, it's historically significant, and culturally significant, and it should be preserved and reused for the community. Thank you very much.
Holly. Okay, the last two people on the pre-registered list for tonight before we move on to the additional raised hands are Keith Weir, apologies if I'm not saying your name correctly, and then Edward Woods. Keith, are you with us? We are not seeing Keith on our list. So we are going to move on to Edward Woods, and then anyone else, again, who hasn't had the opportunity, just raise your hand. We're to come back through the list of folks and call on you. Edward Woods, our team is unmuting you, and please state your name for the record. Your time begins when you start speaking. Edward, if you're speaking, your audio is not on. I'm not hearing.
Apologize. Good afternoon. My name is Edward Woods. I'm the Deputy Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. My physical address is 4970 Bridgeport Way, West University Place, 98467. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington to clarify the official position of support for Zenith proposal. This letter is provided to document the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington reasoning for and support for the proposed demolition of all existing structures located at 23660 Marine View Drive South. In the early 100 years since the construction of the former Masonic Retirement Center, the Masons have owned, operated, and maintained the center. In the early 2000s, the Masons began investigating potential redevelopment of the property. Following those investigations, the Masons determined the organization's interests were best served by offering the property for sale with the condition that any redevelopment activities would need to rehabilitate and preserve the center. Following 15 years of studies, investigations, mothballed proposals, and the Masons' own intimate knowledge of the condition of the center, it became clear that what many may see as an asset on the outside is in fact a substantial liability once the actual interior and structural conditions of the building were investigated and the costs were obtained. The condition of the center proved to be an insurmountable barrier to repurposing of the property. Every potential buyer determined that the significant costs to bring the center up to code and then convert it to another use were not economically feasible. As a result of the significant deterioration of the buildings and a clear indication that there was no market for this kind of property, the Masons relisted the property for sale without conditions, which attracted many interested parties. In that process, the Masons wanted to identify an investor that would work with community and demonstrate they have the background, abilities, and vision to shepherd the property for the next 100 years or more. In that regard, the Masons are very confident in the abilities of Zenith Properties LLC team to be a good partner for Des Moines community. Masons feel the transfer of the property to Zenith Properties LLC and the proposed demolition of the existing buildings represent the greatest potential for a positive, successful future for the property and the community. On July 9, 2019, the Masons applied for demolition of all existing structures on the property, which was assigned the permit number LU 2019-0032, and has since been transferred to the current property owner, Zenith Properties LLC. While the Masons hold no title, deed, or other interest in the property, the Masons want to do what is best for the community and therefore support the proposed action under LUA 2019-0032 and support the demolition of the existing structure. Sincerely, Cameron M. Bailey, Grand Master, Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Washington. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter and note that we have no further comment on the matter.
Thank you, Edward. Okay, we have reached the end of the list of pre-registered speakers. Again, if you are just joining us and would like to give comment, please use the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. I am going to call on people as they appear on my participant list here. It's not necessarily in alphabetical order. I'll call on people as I see them. Do my best to give people a heads up as we work through names. So the first hand that I'm seeing raised is Eugenia Wu. Eugenia, our team is unmuting you. Please state your name for the record and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Okay. Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is Eugenia Wu, and I'm the Director of Preservation Services at Historic Seattle. Our main program areas are education, advocacy, and real estate development. We've saved over 40 historic properties since 1973. We currently own 10 historic properties. So we, more than anyone else, understand the challenge of rehabilitating historic buildings, particularly ones that have seen better days. They're challenging, but they're not impossible, and we could speak to that directly. Previous speakers have talked about how significant the Masonic home is, and we definitely agree. This is not important just to the Des Moines community or to South King County, but it's important to the entire state. It's such a unique property that losing this would be really devastating to sort of the devastating, and the impact would just be really immense. And once you demolish something, you're never going to get it back. And the property has 27 acres, and which means there's a lot of room for infill development to make a project viable. We're glad to see a preservation alternative and adaptive reuse in the draft EIS under the scoping, but we really need to look at use. I know you state that you're not going to look at use, but how do you look at a cost benefit analysis or to see if the project is even viable without looking at what proposed uses there are? When Historic Seattle looks at projects, we have to look at who the potential uses are and what the potential uses are. Because only when you combine the two together can you really look at the real picture. And so that's really important. And also, let's be creative. I mean, there's a lot of passion and creativity out there, and a lot of skills and experience with various potential team members. We think there's a solution to this, and we know it's been years since this has been going on, but we really fully support preservation, and we'll do what we can. But we'll be submitting written comments in more details before the June 2nd deadline. But I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to comment, and we hope to see this property preserved and to be reused in the future for many decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next three hands that I'm seeing raised on my list are Tina Orwell, Susan White, and Suzanne Vargo. We're going to start with Tina. Tina, our team is unmuting you, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. Again, Tina Orwell. I'm a state representative in the area. I live a block away from the landmark on the Sound. And obviously spend a lot of time driving by it. Our prior Rotary meeting in Des Moines met there, and so I'm pretty familiar with inside the building. And if you've ever been in it, we used to do a Halloween house event there, and one of the floors has this incredible organ that's just extraordinary. So it's a very special place. And I've been working with Senator Kaiser and our state agencies, just trying to understand, have we looked at every option, looking at the federal and state tax credits. We know just Key Arena had all these resources put into it that included tax credits. So we just want to make sure we're exploring every option. I do not know what all has been explored before that. But the other thing I really wanted to note is we're an airport community, and we are impacted by so many things in our community that it's just very challenging to see something so special be removed from our community. And so again, we'll continue to explore what options those are and work with our state agencies, and appreciate the ability to comment tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Okay, the next person is Susan White and then Suzanne Vargo. Susan, our team is unmuting you. Please state your name for the record and your time begins when you start speaking.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Susan White and I live in Des Moines down here in Redondo. I'm a former city council person. Also, I was on the board with the Washington Trust for 8 years and had a lot to do with the redevelopment of the Des Moines Beach Park, which, you know, it's true, just listening to so many people advocating for preservation, economically, it pays off for communities. And the beach park is a good example of that. Those buildings were all slated to be torn down kind of at one time, and now it's a thriving center for the community. And I think just all the agencies that have been here, the Washington Trust, Holly Chamberlain, Historic Seattle, Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, there's so many resources. And I think, you know, that's in the city's best interest to utilize those resources. And I honestly think there's a good way that we can preserve this. Also, really good news is the Weyerhaeuser headquarters is going to be repurposed and you know, part of preserve. So, you know, they managed to do that. IRG company owns it. They'll still have other things on there, but that main headquarter building, which is absolutely a treasure, is going to be repurposed. So, you know, that happened. So I have hope that we can find a way to preserve that beautiful landmark Masonic home. And I'm going to keep that faith. So thank you all, our representatives, especially everyone that has come tonight to speak on behalf of preserving that beautiful building. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, the next person is Suzanne Vargo. Suzanne, our team is unmuting you, and your time, state your name for record, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Hi, thank you. My name is Suzanne Vargo.
Hi, Suzanne, we can't hear you. Let's give you a second. We'll restart the clock, but if you could turn your volume up, we're not hearing you. Suzanne, are you with us now?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Not well. Okay, so Suzanne, we'll come back to you in just a minute. We'll give you a chance to adjust. So it looks like we have worked through our list of pre-registered participants as well as people who have raised their hand. We're still going to give Suzanne an opportunity to speak. We are here as a project team until 8:30 to take comments. So we will check with Suzanne in another minute, but just want to let you know from here on out, our project team is going to stay. We'll be here until 8:30. If people want to drop in and give comment, our court reporter will be here to give comment. But for the most part, that does conclude our presentation for the evening. We know 3 minutes is not a lot of time to speak, so do encourage you to go to the project website, continue to visit and give formal comment through that portal. Okay, Suzanne, let's try again. We're going to unmute you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
It is better. You'll want to speak loudly.
I will do my very best. Thank you. I apologize for the audio. 57-year resident of Federal Way, Washington, member of the Historical Society. And I would like to say, as a nonprofit member of the group KEEP, Washington Trust for Historic Preservation is exceptional. We have saved a piece of property due to their negotiations and their expertise. I have taken 4 pages worth of notes by all of these intelligent, thoughtful community members, and the lack of transparency, the lack of SEPA regulations and following the law is very disappointing. The character of Des Moines will be altered. The character of our entire area and the proud moment when you see this amazing building will be lost forever. The Masons will be receiving money for their own benefit. And it is highly disappointing how they are selling out their own history, as well as the community members and everybody that they have served. I can talk more, but I truly appreciate all of the creative efforts, and this can be done. I worked with the Weyerhaeuser, Save Weyerhaeuser campus property, and all things are possible. Please be open. Please do the right thing. Inform the public and do the legal best so we can all get on the same page. I am grateful for this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. So if anyone is just joining us, we are currently taking public comment on the scoping process and the environmental impact statement for this project. It looks like we've gotten through all of our pre-registered speakers as well as people who have raised their hand. So what we are going to do now is take about a 10-minute break. We're going to reconvene at 7:40. The project team will be available to take additional comments, and those will be documented in the same way everyone else's comments have been here this evening. So we'll step back for about 10 minutes and then return. And again, encourage you to visit the project website. And we thank everyone who registered tonight, who attended and is participating in this public process. I also want to note there's been some additional questions just about process, format, and documentation submitted through the Q&A. We aren't able to get to all those questions tonight, but we are noting them. We've noted your recommendations for meeting formats and summary. So thank you for those contributions. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. We will see the project team back here at 7:40 and look forward to any other additional comments that people would like to provide. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We have just taken a 10-minute break from public comments. If you are just joining us, we are taking public comments on the scoping process and the environmental impact statement until 8:30 p.m. If you would like to give a formal comment tonight, you can do so by using the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. We will call on speakers as they appear on the list. Our team will unmute you, and then your time will begin when you start speaking. So again, if you have not provided formal comment tonight, would like to do so in this Zoom platform, you can do so by using the raise hand function, and then our team will call on you. We currently don't have any hands raised, but we are going to stay here until 8:30. And again, a recording and the slides of this meeting will be available through the project website and the city. There's also a formal transcript being produced for this meeting. So all project materials and meeting materials will be available through the city at a later date. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We will just be here as a team. And again, we're not taking any additional questions and answers, but you're welcome to submit those to the city as well. If you are having any technical issues, we ask that you use the chat, but we're not taking formal comment through the chat window. Okay, I do see a hand raised. It looks like Ernest Thompson has a hand raised. Ernest, our team is going to unmute you. Please state your name for the record, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Hi, my name is Ernest Thompson, and I'm from Normandy Park City Council member. I spoke before. I just wanted to add a couple of short comments. The gentleman who spoke from the Masonic organization was referring to some studies done 15, 20 years ago, apparently, on the financial cost it would take to restore everything up to code and make it financially viable. No matter what the deficit was, that was a long time ago. And it doesn't take into account that this is a building that is about history now. It's not just about simple dollars and cents, money in, money out. It's about real history. And it's the only building in Washington state that has this history. If the Washington state legislature building burnt down or was destroyed or seriously damaged, do you think they would spend any time wasting talking about whether they should just tear it down and let it be instead of restoring it? Of course not. They would rebuild it. And the same thing goes for the Notre Dame in Paris, which burnt down a couple of years ago. Money was no issue. Well, we may not have a building that's 500 years old here in the United States, especially in the West, but we certainly have a building here that is our version of historically significant. It's all we've got. So money must not be allowed to be an issue in terms of restoring it. The state has to be involved. And it's just obvious once you've walked in this building, when you see how amazing it is and the opportunities, that with just an ounce of creative thinking, you can turn it into a vibrant, active, not just community center, but really a regional center. And you can actually, when they talk about, making Des Moines or some of these other cities destination points, this is a perfect example of how you do it. Frankly, half the people that come to Seattle these days, they don't want to go downtown Seattle. It's such a disaster. in so many ways that we are all well aware. But they might be and would be very interested in coming to a fascinating place like the Masonic Lodge that might have the right restaurants, coffee shops, the boutiques, whatever combination.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see that, sorry about that. We are having some technical issues right now. And I see that there is another hand that has requested to speak. Okay, and we will have you on in just a second here, Doreen.
Hi again. Yeah, for full transparency, and since everything will be a public record, could we also see who from city staff and council, along with who is in attendance of this meeting? Will that be public knowledge? And I guess if you can't answer the question, I'd prefer to see that list of people who are involved in this and who's signed up to listen, tune in, and also especially from the city. Also, I want to reiterate again, I think it's been a few times, that this EIS, it does need to include the developer's plans because you can't really analyze the costs of redoing the building, like renovating it, doing all this, without also weighing the cost of him tearing everything down, building materials, transportation, the environmental impact. So again, I really don't feel like this EIS will be full and complete unless we have the plans of the developer and what the intentions are for that property. And again, and just reinforcing that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Doreen. Okay. It looks like Colleen is still having some technical issues. And right now I'm not seeing anyone else who has their hand raised for any comments at this time. So we will be available here until 8:30. If anyone else would be interested in submitting your comments. Hello there, Jonathan. I see that you have requested to speak. I believe that you are also supporting several people who are with you there. So please state your name for the person who is going to submit their comments.
Well, my name is Heinz Gilhart. It says Jonathan Boyar, who's our manager of the facility of Judson Park. And for some reason, we got his code to log in. I would just like to say thank you for all the guys that are saying we ought to keep the thing around here and save the building. It's just great. I think the history is there. I think we've heard from many people that yes, it's going to cost a little bit of money to keep it up, but I would just like to say, keep the building up and keep the history in this state. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, and it looks like we have another hand up with Lloyd Little Jr. I'm unmuting you now.
Oh, thank you. Just wanted to add a quick extra side note here. Echoing what the Ernest Thompson was saying about the it's just a super classical historical site that can really be leveraged like nationwide. It should be in one of those travel books, like Lonely Planet or something. When you're in Washington, go see this place, It just has that kind of feel to it that I know other states do that. So, why not Washington? And also, Highline College is right up the street. When you're looking at funding, they've got tons of money coming in. Their student population is growing. I think they went from community college to state college to they're in collaboration with Central Washington University. I'm sure they need more space. They don't have much for student housing. They got a little tiny building up there on Pack Highway. You go to the UW, you see these classic buildings over there with all the cherry blossoms, and that's what makes you want to go, to the UW. And it just feels like that old Oxford, Cambridge style university, kind of deep center of learning. I mean, you got that right here. So I don't know if, people want to reach out to Highline College and see if is there any room for collaboration there? Something. You could do projects in the back. You got a lot of stuff for, botanical projects. You could study biology stuff. You can set up stuff for professors there. It's just it could be real, and like a community hub too. So that's just an idea. I just thought I'd throw it out there since people are looking at other possible funding routes. So just wanted to share that, and thank you once again.
Okay, thank you for those additional comments. And I am not currently seeing anyone else on the list that is waiting to comment at this time.
And again, we just want to reiterate that everything from tonight, from this presentation, the PowerPoint slides, will be posted on the project website. We will also be putting together a scoping summary that will reflect all of the information that was collected during this period, the public comments received both through this platform, through the mail, through online portal, letters that are submitted from organizations. So thank you all for your questions. Again, we really appreciate it. And even for questions we weren't able to get into during the Q&A portion, we have noted all those questions that were submitted. And again, we'll try to address where we can questions related to the scoping period and additional project communications and materials. And again, if you're just joining us, we are providing public comment opportunity until 8:30 p.m. If you'd like to give comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand function on Zoom, and our project team will call on you. If you're just joining us, we are taking public comment until 8:30 p.m. To provide comment, please use the raise hand function on the Zoom screen and our team will unmute you and you will have 3 minutes to provide comment. We will have a clock on the screen. Thank you. Hi again, just for anyone who is joining, we have heard most of the public comments we expect to hear tonight, but we are taking comments until 8:30. If you would like to provide comment, please raise your hand using the raise function on your Zoom screen and our project team will call on you and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. We are getting some comments through the Q&A portal, and just want to remind folks that if you would like to give a formal comment on the project, to please do so either by raising your hand, giving it verbally tonight for our record, or submitting online through the URL that's currently listed on the screen, or you can also mail your comments to the city. Comments must be received by June 2nd, 2022. And again, please either give comments verbally tonight or through the forms that I have mentioned. We are not taking formal comment through the Q&A or chat window. Thanks. Hi again. If you are just joining us, we actually have some people who have joined in the last couple of minutes. We are taking public comment until 8:30. We do have some hand raised, so I will call on hands as I see them. And a reminder that we will put the clock up for 3 minutes and your time will begin when you start speaking. So the first person whose name I'm seeing is Steve Edmondson. Steve, our team is unmuting you and your time will begin when you start speaking. And please state your name for the record. Steve, if you're speaking, we're not hearing you. We're going to restart the clock and see if we can.
How about now?
Okay, great. We'll restart the clock for you.
I appreciate that. My name is Steve Edmundston. I am a resident of Des Moines. I live at 27043 7th Place South. Lived here for most of my 60 years. I think for the public record, what I want to share at this point is that I've read in great detail the comments that have been submitted by the Washington Trust for Historic Preservation. And I agree with all of their comments. And I want to make it clear as we are tallying what folks are saying here tonight, that I agree with all their comments. And in fact, I incorporate what the Washington Trust has said as part of my own public comment. For the sake of brevity, I just want the record to reflect that I am incorporating all of their comments. But I do want to highlight one point that they make, and that is, I'm sure you've heard a number of times tonight already, that I don't think it is possible to adequately assess the impact environmentally, historically, culturally of the loss of the Masonic home without knowing what is intended to replace it. Like I said, I'm sure you've heard that. I just don't know how it is, almost as a law of physics, possible to know what the impact to our city is going to be when we don't know what's going to replace it. So I would join with that comment. And my original thought that is an adjunct to that point, I think, is this, and maybe it's more of a notion of analogy, but I think it also is important as part of the scoping to think about the cumulative impact of our choices over the last several decades. And so I would pick 30 years, go back 30 years and see what historical properties that we have already removed in the city of Des Moines, and look at that as a cumulative analysis. That's important under SEPA and NEPA. Our city actually takes that position in the context of the airport, that cumulative impact of an event is critical to the analysis. I think it's important that the cumulative impact of our loss of historical sites be assessed. And here's the analogy that I would think of. If we take a tree out of a forest, one tree out of a whole forest, we might say we missed the tree, but the cumulative impact is not great. If there is only one tree left and we take that tree out, the cumulative impact is catastrophic. If the landmark is our last tree for historical and cultural preservation, its removal on a cumulative basis is catastrophic to the community and to the region. And I would strongly suggest that we incorporate as part of our analysis that cumulative assessment. Thank you for a chance to comment and waiting tonight for people that couldn't come earlier to show up. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Steve. Again, if you're just joining us, it is 8:15. We have about 10-12 minutes available to continue public comment, and then we will just formally wrap by 8:30 for the evening. This is one of the many ways to give comment. You can also do so by visiting the city's website, which will take you to the online portal where you can submit formal comment. You can also mail to the city directly. And again, we've continued to drop this information and hyperlinks in the chat if you need those for reference. All of this project material and presentation will be available soon at the city project website. So again, if you'd like to give comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand function on Zoom, and we will call on you. You'll have 3 minutes. So if you think you might want to comment verbally tonight, please do so. We have about 12 minutes left to accommodate verbal comments this evening. It's now 8:20 p.m. So we are going to give a last call for verbal comments tonight. We'll give you a couple seconds. If you're still considering wanting to give comment, we welcome that. Please raise your hand. I'll call on you. If we don't have any additional folks wishing to give comments tonight, we will be concluding, but we will leave the slide up until 8:30 for people to jot down any information. Again, just encourage you to visit the city website. Also encourage you to sign up for email updates regarding this SEPA process. As Pam mentioned in the earlier presentation, there are additional opportunities for public input and comment throughout the SEPA process, and that information will be available on the website. Okay, well, we are not seeing any additional hands raised for comment, so we are going to move to conclude the evening. Thank you all so much for being a part of this public process, for your contributions to the SEPA process, and for the input that you gave tonight. We're appreciative of your time and look forward to connecting with you again in the future. Sorry, you'll see our speakers drop off, but we'll leave the slide up for a couple more minutes. Thanks all.
So Candace, we see that you have your hand up, and I will unmute you. There you go. And let me move over to the slide for the comments. So please state your name as you begin speaking for the record. Thank you. And Candace, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I apologize. So basically, I was wondering if you've appointed someone to assess outside opportunities to save the property. Just a question.
Oh, and as a reminder, we are accepting public comment at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. We will make sure to note your question as well for the record. And it looks like seeing no further hands up at this moment, we are going to wrap things up. So once again, you can submit your comments online by June 2nd at 4:30 p.m. at the website, which the URL is on the screen right now and also in the chat. You can mail your comments in to the address that is on the screen. That needs to be postmarked by June 2nd. And you can also find additional information, including the slides from this meeting this evening and other project information at the URL that's on the screen, the project website, which is www.desmoineswa.gov/Zenith EIS. And thank you everyone for your participation this evening, and thank you to our presenters and speakers tonight. And I think we will wrap it up with that. So thank you everyone. Good night.